Branding and advertising are as old as human society. Even though there was no use of words such as brands, advertising, promotions, or public relations, these activities did exist since ancient times. Advertising in its essence is a need to influence the thinking of people. Whether they were politicians, artisans or merchants, the people needed some ways to promote their businesses. And as such, we're using advertising. In this first season of Ad Chronicles, we are going to explore how advertising evolved throughout history, stopping at some of the landmarks, scandals and important events to finally arrive to today. But before showing the complex trading systems in place nowadays, it is good to start by asking ourselves the question, how did we get here? One of the earliest traces of advertising can be found in ancient Egypt. From marks on vases to entire buildings being signed, these signatures from artists aimed at promoting their work through and after the lifetime. Even the pyramids are believed to serve self-promoting purposes for the rulers of the time. They were both marks in the desert where the body of a deceased ruler was laid, and a way to ensure the ruler, viewed as a god at that time, would act even after death as the defender of order from disorder. The Egyptians, who also invented papyrus around 3000 BC, were using it for mass communication. As a matter of fact, the first ad on papyrus was originally made there around that time. It was an advert offering a prize for capturing slaves who escaped. Paper was however not a common type of advertising used in ancient Egypt though. Because of illiteracy, it was indeed very difficult to convey a message outside of image and speech. And as such, it was common to have stone or wooden slabs in front of shops representing the goods sold there. Not only that, but competition was fierce as to who had the better slabs to attract customers. Another very common use of advertising that dates back as early, if not earlier, than Egypt was hawkers. These men or women spent their day walking the street yelling to promote the names of the goods arriving by ships, and some successful merchants even hired personal hawkers used to only promote their shop. Africa was not the only place where ads from ancient civilizations were found. In Babylon, which was located on the present-day Iraq territory, royal propagandas portraying the king on stone slabs were found dating as early as 1700 BC. From the Persian Empire to ancient China, we found some traces and evidence of the use of papyrus, town criers, and promotional slabs as advertising all over Asia. Not only that, but ancient Asia saw the emergence of the first seals that were first used to verify documents, but then later also used by rulers as a trademark. Later in the Zhou dynasty, trade fairs were held daily and promoted by hawkers in the cities. Europe was not left out, as the cradle of Western civilization also has seen a great share of advertising, dating as early as the Bronze Age. Small dish-shaped seals used to mark goods property were for example found dating back to as early as 2000 BC in Crete. Greek pottery was also renowned and sold throughout the Mediterranean as well as in distant countries. These potteries were often signed by the craftsmen as a way to advertise their product. But advertising was, however, not reserved to craftsmen, as both the Roman Empire and ancient Greek were known to extensively use propaganda and town criers to advertise political agendas as well as products. Later in history, Alexander the Great was portrayed as a firm believer in advertising, using large events as medium for personal propagandas. In an attempt to unite Macedonia and Persia, he married the elder daughter of the Persian king Darius and enabled 80 officers to marry the women of Persia. This kind of propaganda not only had a great political impact, but also served to increase Alexander the Great's influence throughout the globe. As a matter of fact, some of the advertising used thousands of years ago still affect us today. Take the Olympic Games for example, which can be considered as one of the first global brand events. Not only did the Olympic Games play a major role in the branding of Greece, but still to this day, the Acropolis attracts millions of tourists every year. All the written advertising has existed since ancient civilizations. What really propelled advertising to new heights was literacy. The ability to read and write made it possible to convey more complex and persuasive messages to the public. And as such, one of the major revolutions witnessed in advertising was brought with the printing revolution. The year is 1436. A young German goldsmith named Johann Gutenberg had been desperately searching for a way to make money for months. Gutenberg had previously worked on copper engraving. Thanks to this, he believed he could improve the very tedious process of printing using letter blocks. Prior to this, printing was done with scribes whose sole purpose was to handwrite books and documents. There were also some hand printers, which enabled to be a bit more productive, although they were tedious and expensive to run. This manual process made written document very expensive, and thus unaffordable for the vast majority of the population. Several years of research later, Gutenberg had designed a movable printing press, which started the printing revolution. This printing press could produce up to a staggering 3,600 pages per workday, when handwriting and comparison could only produce up to 4 a day. This invention later enabled handbills, posters, flyers, pamphlets, and other publicity material to be produced in large quantities. The Gutenberg printing press was however not directly used for advertising as we know it today. The first mass-produced book with this invention is often referred to as the 42-line Bible, or the Gutenberg Bible. Rest assured that this Bible was not 42 lines long though, but rather represented the breakthrough achieved through this printing technique, as it now became possible to print 42 lines per page using this method. Unfortunately, Gutenberg did not live long enough to see his invention become global, as he died in 1468. Despite that, there is no doubt that this invention was one of the major breakthroughs in advertising history. The year is now 1605, and the first newspaper, the Relation, was issued in Strasbourg, Germany. We have no surviving example of the first edition of the Relation. However, based on later publications found dating back to 1609, we have found no traces of advertising being used inside of it. From this point on, it took about 100 years to see the first ad in newspaper, in the Boston Newsletter in 1704. In this date, readers saw an ad in the last page of the weekly newspaper promoting an estate for sale. Newspapers were however quite expensive at that time, making it hard to afford for most. We thus have to make another jump in history to find the first newspaper that was trying to monetize itself through advertising. In 1836 in France, newspaper La Presse used advertising to make newspaper more affordable, cutting its prices by half and making it more accessible to the population. The advertisements in La Presse were for insurances, pharmaceuticals, jobs, stocks, travels, medical treatments, and mustard. It is quite interesting to see that the theme aborted in ads 200 years ago are very similar to what we still have to this day. Following this, it became more and more common to see ads displayed in newspaper, billboard, and flyers amongst others. Funnily enough, we only have to go 5 years in the future to find the first advertising agency in the United States. Volney Palmer was an agency founded in 1840. They specialized in buying discounted ad spaces in newspaper and reselling them to brands wishing to advertise there. We have now journeyed through the ink-stained beginnings of advertising, from the earliest symbols etched in stones to the printed page that revolutionized how we share information and sell IDs. The printing press set the stage, but the story is far from over. What comes next is a transformation that will take advertising out of the page and into the airwaves. The static of the radio and the glow of the television are about to change everything once again. In our next episode, we'll explore how advertisers learned to whisper, then sing, then shout their messages into every home, and how the era of madmen turned selling into an art form, and sometimes a battleground. We'll see the highs and lows, the genius campaigns, and the controversy that still echo today. How did the morals of the time shape the messages? And how did the messages reshape society? Stay with us, as for the next chapter of Ad Chronicles, it's a story of innovation, persuasion, and the power of a good story. Make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on. You won't want to miss Madmen and Morals, the golden age to the grey areas. The past has set the stage, and the future of advertising is just one play button away.